Jai Gopi Jannavalabha, Jaya Girivadadari, Jaya Jashodanandana, Jaya Braja Janaranjana, Jaya Jashodanandana, Jaya Braja Janaranjana, Jai Jamuna Tiravanachari, Jaya Kunja Bihari, Jaya Jamuna Tiravanachari, Jaya Kunja Bihari, Jaya Radha Madhava, Jaya Kunja Bihari, Jaya Radha Madhava, Jaya Kunja Bihari. Shri Radha Madhava ki jai, Shri Radha Murli Dar ki jai, Shri Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragunatanditam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Grateful to be in this wonderful assembly of devotees. Thank you for allowing me to have this opportunity to associate with you virtually. I'm grateful to be with you. I was just listening to one Vaishnava speak over the weekend, and they were referencing the Panchanga Bhakti, the 5 main limbs of devotional service that Rupa Goswami gives in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. The holy name, the holy dham, the Bhagavatam, the worship of the deity, and association of the devotees is the 5 potent forms of devotional service. And I was hearing how ultimately all of them depend in many ways on the association of the devotees. That the association of devotees in many ways is the underlying unifying factor of all these principles. Right? That when we read Srimad Bhagavatam, we don't just read it on our own. Yes, but even when we're reading Srimad Bhagavatam on our own, we're associating with Srila Prabhupada and the Acharyas and the saints who have in the conversations, we're associated with Dhruva Maharaj, with Prahlad Maharaj, with those great devotees, and we come together to hear and discuss Krishna Katha in order to enhance and bring out that realization. You know, and when we go to the holy places of Sri Vrindavan Dham, Mathura Mandala, we don't just go to be in a physical location, we go to associate with the great saints and the sadhus that were there. And so in this way, he was explaining how each of the limbs of devotional service correlates to an opportunity or is enhanced in the association of devotees. So when we come together to hear Srimad Bhagavatam class, it's not just necessarily the idea of coming to get some spiritual information that might help us in our spiritual life. But we're actually performing a great service just by being here in the presence of each other and offering our presence to others as well. That you just being here in the Zoom room itself is a performance of devotional service. And it gives me an opportunity as well to enhance my service by associating with each of you. So we should never minimize the quality or the effect of sadhu sangha in our lives. And so just grateful for the opportunity to be here with all of you. And from what I understand, we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 80, verses 30 through 33. So I'll pull those verses up for us here. I can share my screen so that we can all see them. Okay, so this is Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 80, verses 30 through 33. So 30, 31, and 32 don't have a purport, and 33 does have a purport. So I'll just read the Sanskrit of the first verse. Kechit kurvanti karmani kamar ahata chetasaha tyajanta prakritir daivir yataham loka sangraham. This chapter is the meeting of Sudama Brahmana, just so we can go back to see the title. The Brahman Sudaman visits Lord Krishna in Dwarka. So Sudama Brahman is a dear childhood friend of Krishna. This is a very, very sweet collection of verses that we're going to be getting here. A very, very sweet collection of verses because the pastime itself is very, very sweet. And also this particular section of verses is very, very, very sweet because it's the intimate exchange of Sudama and Krishna is remembering their childhood together. Krishna is remembering service that they performed together to their guru, and the verses will speak to and illuminate that relationship. The purport is itself very short, so we'll just have to pull from the verses themselves. But Krishna is going to be remembering his childhood with his dear friend and the service that they performed with their guru in these verses. So verse 30. Having renounced all material propensities, which spring from the Lord's illusory energy, some people execute worldly duties with their minds, undisturbed by mundane desires. They act as I do, to instruct the general populace. And I'll go ahead and I'll just read all the verses so we make sure that we get through all of them. Verse 31. My dear Brahmin, do you remember how we lived together in our spiritual master's school? When a twice-born student has learned from his guru all that is to be learned, he can enjoy spiritual life, which lies beyond all ignorance. Verse 32. My dear friend, he who gives a person his physical birth is his first spiritual master, and he who initiates him as a twice-born Brahmin and engages him in religious duties is indeed more directly his spiritual master. But the person who bestows transcendental knowledge upon the members of all the spiritual orders of society is one's ultimate spiritual master. Indeed, he is as good as my own self. And verse 33. Certainly, O Brahman, of all the followers of the Varnashram system, those who take advantage of the words I speak in my form as a spiritual master, and thus easily cross over the ocean of material existence, best understand their own true welfare. Purport. One's father is a natural object of reverence, as is a religious leader who initiates one into sacred ceremonies and instructs one in general wisdom. But ultimately, the bona fide spiritual master learned in the transcendental science, and thus able to take one across the ocean of birth and death to the spiritual world, such a guru is most deserving of worship and respect, for he is the direct representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as stated here. Hare Krishna. So I'll just pull up the verses here so that we can see them all together. Yeah, beautiful. Okay, so starting with the first verse. Having renounced all material propensities which spring from the Lord's material energy, some people execute worldly duties with their minds undisturbed by mundane desires. They act as I do to instruct the general populace. This instruction itself is a direct carryover from what we get from Bhagavad Gita. In the 18th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, the very, very first verse, Arjuna asks a clarifying question about the difference between Tyaga and Sannyas. These two words, which both indicate renunciation, whereas Tyaga is referred to as an internal renunciation, a detachment from the results of activities, and sannyas is referred to as the renounced order of life, the external expression of taking on a life of renunciation. And Arjuna is clarifying to ask the difference between the two and how to distinguish them and create some sort of hierarchy. And Prabhupada, in his purport, the very, very beginning of that purport, says something very, very interesting. He says that the Bhagavad Gita itself is really only 17 chapters long. He said the Bhagavad Gita is complete within 17 chapters. And the 18th chapter, in all practical purposes, a summary of everything that's come before. And when you go back and look in the Bhagavad Gita, you can see this concept being mentioned from the very, very beginning in the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna is talking about not just, he's thinking of the verse itself, of that one may externally withdraw their senses, but internally be meditating on that very thing that they have withdrawn their senses from. In the third chapter, Krishna calls such a person a pretender, right? And so Srila Prabhupada gave us a very, very beautiful formula, a very beautiful lifestyle in which we are able to engage our propensities in such a way that when we dedicate our life, our offerings, our very being to the service of Krishna, right, for Krishna's pleasure, that itself is a higher level of renunciation than when we just grit our teeth and just try to deny ourselves something that internally we're just dwelling on and can't get over. And so this verse here is mentioning the idea of being able to go about my life in such a way where I'm undisturbed internally because of my focus and meditation on my purpose in Krishna consciousness, right? So Krishna is speaking in this way about what is the nature of renunciation, which we find in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita, end of Bhagavad Gita, and here even at the end of the Bhagavatam in the 10th canto, end of the 10th canto, right? So this purpose is very, very, very important. Why is Krishna prefacing this verse here in terms of the later verses? Because he's going to be speaking about the instructions of the spiritual master, right? Next verse, my dear Bhamra, do you remember how we lived in our spiritual master's school? When a twice-born student has learned from his guru all that is to be learned, they can enjoy spiritual life, which lies beyond all ignorance. And again here, that enjoyment of spiritual life means that, as Krishna mentions in the 24th verse of the 5th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, right? What does Krishna say? One of my favorite verses in the 5th chapter, 24th verse of Bhagavad Gita. Right? One whose happiness is within, who is active and rejoices within, and whose aim is inward is actually the perfect mystic. They are liberated in the Supreme and ultimately attain the Supreme. And the first line of this purport Prabhupada mentions, unless one is able to relish happiness from within, how can they retire from the external engagements meant for deriving superficial happiness? A liberated person enjoys happiness by factual experience. They can, therefore, sit silently at any place and enjoy the activities of life from within. Such a liberated person no longer desires external material happiness. This state is called Brahmabhuta, attaining which one is assured of going back to Godhead, back to home. So in the verse here, it's mentioning enjoying spiritual life. It doesn't always necessarily mean that we have a smooth, wrinkle-free external life. In fact, a lot of times we find just the opposite. We find that the life of Srila Prabhupada himself, we find that the life of the Pandavas and Queen Kunti mentioning her famous prayer about calamities coming again and again into her life. And many times people get confused and bewildered, and their faith becomes disturbed. Krishna mentions this in the 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita when he talks about the 4 types of people that come to him. Anybody remember or know the 4 types of people that come to Krishna as described in the Bhagavad Gita? Ananda Bihari, you're my backup.
Those who want something, those who are looking for knowledge.
Those who want something, the desire of wealth, the desire of some material prosperity. Those who are looking for
Distressed,
knowledge. That's 2.
distressed,
Those who are in distress, so they're looking for some relief.
Inquisitive.
Curious.
Well, the inquisitive is the one that's looking for knowledge. The one
And the wise.
and the wise. This is a little bit of an interesting distinction that I've always wondered about this, and I asked some sadhus about it recently. And one is that there's a curiosity, an interest to understand, right? Desire for knowledge. And the other is one who is genuinely interested in understanding the absolute truth in the sense of wanting to practically apply themselves to a path. I'm not just looking to understand something philosophically. I don't just have a philosophical curiosity. I actually want to dedicate myself to something wholeheartedly and give my heart and dedicate towards whatever truth is. Right? So those distinctions. So one is desiring relief from material distress. One is desiring some sense of enjoyment from material acquisitions. One is desiring the gaining of knowledge. And one is desiring a genuine connection with something higher, with absolute truth, right? And of all those 4 Krishna mentions, that one who's desiring genuine connection with the absolute truth, he describes to be the best of all because he considers them like his own self, and ultimately all of them, through due course of time, make their way towards Krishna. But there's a warning that as long as our devotional service or our connection doesn't mature beyond one of those factors, our spiritual life is in a very precarious situation. Because what happens when I don't get what I prayed for? What happens when the material distress doesn't go away? What happens when things are still confusing and my intellectual curiosities don't get satisfied? Right? Our faith becomes tested when things don't go the way we want or thought they should materially. And so ultimately, as Krishna is mentioning in the 5th chapter of Bhagavad Gita and also here, right? Unless we're having a very personal, deep inner experience of our spiritual life, it's going to be very difficult for us to turn our back, so to speak, on the material world. And turning our back on the material world doesn't mean the way Arjuna thought it meant at the 1st chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, meaning just walking away from all my material responsibilities, saying that's not for me. Interestingly enough, in the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna describes the very thing Arjuna wanted in the 1st chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. What did Arjuna want to do in the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita? Not a trick question.
Take sannyas, go to the forest.
He wanted to take sannyas and go to the forest. And what did Krishna describe in the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita? Without even kind of like pointing it out to Arjuna directly. He wasn't like, hey, Arjuna, this is what you want to do. He just said, here's the path of renunciation. Here's the path of going into the forest and meditating. You sit on, you go and you find a little kusha grass and you focus the eyes between the nose, between the brow, and you do this and you do that, and you focus a light breath, and there you go, Arjuna. And what did Arjuna say? That's crazy. I could never do that. That seems more difficult than controlling the wind. And Krishna, instead of rubbing it on Arjuna's face, is just like, yeah, I know. It's a really, really difficult path. That's why I never prescribed that for you. And that's why we are where we are right now. So that's not what we mean by turning our back on the material world. Turning our back on the material world means that I genuinely, through lived, factual experience, as Prabhupada mentions in the 5th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, have come to recognize, right, as the purport here so beautifully mentions in the 31st verse, right? He says that I speak in my form as a spiritual master, and thus easily cross over the ocean of material existence, best understand their own true welfare. Right? So that's in the verse itself. Best understand their own true welfare. So turning our back on the material world means that I have come to recognize who I am as a spirit soul, where my genuine enjoyment and connection lies. And I'm no longer going to play the game, buy into the lie, allow pop culture to influence me to think that my happiness is somewhere right around the corner over there. Okay? And if we don't have the mercy, the grace, the instruction of Guru in our life, it's easy to forget that. So Krishna is setting up, when he's speaking to Sudama here, the idea of internal versus external renunciation. And that internal renunciation goes side by side like a railroad track with the internal experience and enjoyment of spiritual life from within that Krishna mentions in the 5th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And when we have that, we become able to fulfill the order of our gurus and our teachers ultimately, which is to go out into the world and be a shining example of what it means to have Krishna in our life. Right? There's a beautiful song, I may have quoted it before, that they used to sing in church when I was growing up and going to church on Sundays. They will know we are Christians by our love, by our love. Yes, they'll know we are Christians by our love, right? And so Prabhupada would mention that they'll know my disciples because they're perfect ladies and gentlemen. They'll know that we are devotees not because we have the highest philosophy, not because, this, that, or whatever. They'll know simply by the way that we treat them and that we treat each other, right? And we treat each other with the understanding that each and every person is a representative of my Guru Maharaj, is a representative of Krishna in my life. Srila Prabhupada would say that about his own disciples. I see each of you as representatives of my own spiritual master. And this is why people ask even today, it's hard to sometimes understand the concept of taking on a spiritual master or a guru, especially in today's world where Guru Maharaj is available for everyone, all of us. All of Prabhupada's books are available here. We can listen to any millions of classes on YouTube, and it might seem that what is the need for us to accept initiation? Especially even in today's world where most available gurus aren't even that available, in the sense that you may or may not be able to have the opportunity to have a personal relationship where they'll return your WhatsApp messages and email you and call you if you have a specific question, right? Your guru may have so many disciples, and the closest you can get is by having a mentor who's a senior god brother or god sister. And so people may think, well, my relationship with my guru is not going to change if I take initiation, and the information that's available to me isn't going to enhance. But there's something about accepting a spiritual master who's connected to the chain of parampara, where I'm no longer just generally practicing spiritual life and principles, but now there's a person whom I emulate, not in terms of an imitation by trying to be them, but whose character and example and devotion is something that I align my life with, right? Ravindra Swarupu mentioned this when he was giving his lecture series, Cure of Souls, right? He said, paraphrasing, that there's not a day that goes by where I don't think, is Srila Prabhupada pleased with me? What would Srila Prabhupada want me to do in this situation? And I can relate to that in my own spiritual master. There's not a day that goes by where I'm not thinking, what would my spiritual master want me to do in this situation? Even if that spiritual master is not physically present, there becomes a relationship which transcends the physical, where we have someone's voice speaking to us internally, right? And Krishna mentions as such that That's the Chaitya Guru. The super soul is the Chaitya Guru, the Guru within the heart. But even the external Guru who manifests in the world through flesh and blood in this life also speaks to us, and we carry them in our heart through their Vani. Right? And this verse here, verse 33, mentions, I speak in my form as the spiritual master. In the beginning of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishnadas Kaviraj himself explains this philosophical principle of the various manifestations of the Supreme Absolute Truth, one of which is the spiritual master, the Guru. Right? And so the human being of the spiritual master carries the Guru Tattva and carries that Shakti of representing Krishna in our life. And it's not just the distinctions giving here that, yes, our parents are generally our first spiritual master, right? And then even one who initiates one, a Diksha Guru, which we may not have that so much in Western culture. Maybe some of us get baptized, right, in our spirit, early on in our life. I was baptized when I was a baby, right? And certain families in Eastern traditions or in India, they may have a family guru who just initiates them as they're growing up. But the real guru relationship is one in our line of the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, as carried on by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, is a Shiksha Guru line. Generally, the Shiksha Guru becomes your Diksha Guru, where the Shiksha Guru is the one who instructs you personally in your life, and the Diksha is the one who performs the formal ceremony of initiation. But when you read the writings of Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, the Chaitanya Charitamrita, he describes how ultimately our line is a Shiksha line, right? Where we are less concerned with the formalities of initiation and more concerned with the relationship of the heart carried down through Shishya, through instruction from one guru to the next. And that is what is being referenced or spoken, that one who engages them in religious duties is that directly that highest spiritual master who's carrying that example. So here we're learning about the importance of the guru-disciple relationship, that the guru emulates that internal renunciation. Srila Prabhupada exemplifies that for us, this idea of having renounced all material propensities, yet executing quote-unquote worldly duties through his grihastha life, and then ultimately what seemed like engaging in interacting with the material world in a way that was completely unnecessary for him. Living in Vrindavan, being satisfied at the lotus feet of Radha Damodar, yet crying as sweeping the steps in front of the temple that my spiritual master is giving me the impossible mission, getting on a boat, coming to America, opening temples, all the while experiencing Krishna in his deep connection with his Guru Maharaj, not for a moment being separated from his own Guru Maharaj. Right? And so the spiritual master exemplifies that for us so that we have something to aspire for, an example that we can hold on to, so that we can go about our life, whatever it may be, as preachers and sharers of Krishna consciousness, as businessmen and women, as politicians, as engineers, as school teachers, as mothers and fathers, as spouses, as brothers and sisters and sons and daughters, or what financiers and bankers, whatever our occupation may be, we can carry that fire of our Guru's love and instruction in our heart, allow that to nourish us so that we can go out into the world and be a light that we share with other people and ultimately with each other in the association of community of devotees. In the mood of Trinada Pisunichena, Torori Vasahishnana, Amanina, Manadena, Kirtaniya Sarahari. So that we can be humble like the grass, knowing that I'm simply a product of my Guru's mercy. We can be tolerant, knowing that whatever material discomfort comes my way isn't going to blow me over or destroy my faith, because I have something that I'm experiencing much deeper within, or that I'm aspiring for, or that I've at least seen in the example of others. I'm able to offer respect to others because I recognize the spiritual spark that's within them, and I don't need to demand any praise or respect for myself in return, because that's not what I'm here for. I'll end with this. Rana Swami once gave a class where he said, if you're desiring praise from others in the material world, Krishna will give you that. but that's all you'll get. And he said it in a way, it was like, oh, yeah, you'll get that. If you have material desires to fulfill, you'll get that. But that's all you'll get. And you'll miss out on something so much deeper. So in this mood, when we carry out these principles, we can remember Krishna's name always. We can remember the example of our spiritual master always. And we can remain satisfied in the association of the beautiful Sangha that we have available to us, including right here, right now. So thank you very much. We have 13 minutes. I hope that's enough time. Ananda Bihari Prabhu, over to you for questions, comments, corrections, realizations, reflections.
Thank you so much, Dayal Gauranga Prabhu. Wonderful, all-inclusive class. Hope given, Shastrik. Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you very much. A question: how do we, when I was listening to the class, it's making sense, it's inspiring. But I know that, as soon as I get out of the Zoom classroom, out of the Devotees Association, it'll just slip through my fingers, all that bhakti and realization, all that sweetness. And I'll be again, on my own, kind of against the world. And it's cold, everybody's busy. So how do I carry the guru, the fire of my guru? How do I make it practical? How do I not forget about this when the class is over?
Don't end the class. Yeah. I think that's the principle that we're all in. And there's two things that I'll say to that. Devamrita Swami mentioned this many years ago. He had this urban outreach series, and when I was a younger brahmachari and I first moved to New York, and the general model is that you'll have like a weekly program for people to come to. And this was 15 years ago, what to speak of now. And he was just saying, like, once a week contact is just not enough for people. We'll spend 45 minutes, an hour in a class, and then we're spending the other 23 hours of the day plus the 24 times 6 hours times 6 days the rest of the week. And the onslaught of material energy is so intense that there needs to be more regular touch points during the day. So one end of the answer to the question is that yes, times like this, opportunities like this are for us to kind of get that recharged, to fill up with our spiritual sangha, and to create more of those opportunities throughout our week so that we can stay in contact with spiritual energy, whether it's through the holy name, whether it's through listening to kirtan, whether it's through listening to classes, whether it's through even just what you have on your phone, or just it's like finding those regular touch points of spiritual life, are all helpful. And B, it's important to recognize, I do this regularly, to give yourself a little grace, because we're doing something that's really, 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 really hard. And in some ways, you're doing something that very, very few people in the entire world are trying to do, which is practice Krishna consciousness in the setting you're trying to practice it in. In New York City, in your particular situation. And it's not easy. In one sense, we can say, I'm just doing so terrible, I'm so far away, because we might be comparing ourselves to people who are in a more pristine example, who have a different, more favorable upbringing than us, who have more opportunities to associate with devotees and be in Sangha, etc. But the flip side of it is like, I'm actually doing pretty good. Just the fact that I'm here in class is amazing. Just the fact that I'm asking this question and wondering and praying and having a desire to stay connected to Krishna. Krishna doesn't forget that, and he reciprocates that with the heart. And at the end of the day, we're ultimately products of grace and mercy. So many of our acharyas would pray, you are Patita Pavana, and therefore I am candidate number 1, because I'm the most fallen. And so we should recognize that ultimately at the end of the day, that there are acharyas who pray that when I hear that you are Bhakta Vatsalya, the friend of your devotees, I do not become encouraged by such a statement, because I don't even feel myself to be a devotee. But when I hear that you are Patita Pavana, the friend of the most fallen, my heart becomes gladdened, because I recognize that that's exactly who you're here for, and that's who I am. And so sign me up, number 1, put me in the first line in the queue. So we should give ourselves a little bit of grace and recognize that we're doing better than we think we are sometimes. And even if we're not, then we have the grace of our spiritual master and our devotees, and we keep asking that question, Krishna will reciprocate the answer for us. So
Thank you, Prabhu. Yeah, we normally hear prayers like, I'm servant of the servant of the servant, million times removed. And then Dayal Gauranga Prabhu is saying we should be first in the line. It's so nice.
yes,
Yeah, the only situation where we want to be first in the line is the line for mercy, Krishna's mercy. I'm
yes.
candidate number one. Thank you so much, Prabhu. Wonderful. Never thought about that way. Krishna Kumari, would you like to ask a question?
Yeah, I actually just love what you said in the beginning. I love what you said in the middle, and I love what you said at the end. And I'm feeling like this Bhagavatam space has changed my life tremendously. And then one thing I would add is like the journaling. When you're journaling and reflecting on yourself and then hearing Bhagavatam. So like from Giri Govardhan last week, there's parts of Sudama's story that like there's so many insights. He was sharing that Sudama was like actually attached. He was actually attached to being renounced. So Krishna was like not going to change anything for him. And so for myself, I realized I was attached to enduring suffering. And it's by the devotee's mercies that I'm able to shift some things. So I wonder if others have felt like that there's something that we're attached to that is actually stopping us from actually making advancement, making those connections. Hare Krishna.
Krishna, thank you. There's a really, I highly recommend reading regularly Srila Prabhupada's prayers on the Jaladuta, which many of us have read before. It's worth reading regularly because Srila Prabhupada sort of has this same question as he's arriving in the harbor. And he's just basically asking, how am I going to do this? Like, I've come all this way and now I'm recognizing, like, how is this actually going to happen with people that are so infused with material consciousness that, English is not my first language. I don't know anything about this culture. Google didn't exist and I wasn't able to look everybody up and understand the latest trends, and I don't have a TikTok account, and like, how am I going to do this? And he just surrendered it up over to Krishna. He said, you can empower them. And he quotes this long section of verses from the Srimad Bhagavatam that talk about the power of regular hearing. And we hear that Nashta Prayasha Bhadrishu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, regularly hearing and chanting. And Prabhupada just said that if I just create a situation, an opportunity where there's that regular contact consistently, which is what you're talking about, Krishna Kumari Devi, there is a change in the heart that takes place, and the knot in the heart becomes pierced, as he mentions, through that regular hearing and chanting, right? It's like I broke my arm a year and a half ago, or a little over a year ago, and I just had to keep showing up to physical therapy, right? Just kept showing up and just allowed the therapist to just keep working on me, and gradually it restored me back to normal functioning. So Bhagavatam class is kind of like that. It's spiritual physical therapy, spiritual therapy. We're just showing up and letting the message do a little bit of a number on our heart. And like Narottam Nitai Prabhu is asking in the chat, he's saying how to listen intently to Krishna during class and other times, to the Paramatma in our hearts, and chanting mentally when we're out in public, like on the streets of NYC. 3 things that I would say to that. One is just to keep doing it regularly. Keep it consistently. Don't judge your sadhana. Don't judge the quality of your sadhana always based on the experience you have while doing it. We'll say it was a great japa session because I was really focused and I felt Krishna's name. And then if we're mind distracted, we think, oh, that was a really poor japa session. What was the even use of that? It's like, no, like you're showing up, and that consistently, like you're revving the engine, and it's not a one-day thing. It's over time that when I continuously show up, it generates an energy. The second thing, and I'm not good at any of these things, so I'm just giving you the principle. Like, I'm not saying that I'm the example, but I know something, right? It's like me trying to explain quantum physics to somebody or something, and it's like I'm just reading from the textbook here. I don't really know what's going on, so forgive me for speaking things that I myself am not adept in. But the second thing is to be cautious of what we're doing when we're not hearing and chanting, because those are the things that are going to show up when we do sit and chant. The media we consume, the conversations we absorb ourselves in. Japa, you know, um, hearing and chanting is a lifestyle. It's not just a decision we make to set aside 15 minutes, an hour every day. It's a lifestyle of how is this going to affect my hearing and chanting, my absorbing? Because when I sit down to hear and chant, to listen intently, you know, whatever was on my screen 10 minutes before is going to pop up into my mind, leave the impression. And the third thing is, again, where we started with was the association of devotees. The more that we listen and connect to devotees who are doing that, the more inspired we'll be. And so, association of devotees, regularly bring hearing and chanting into our life, and to be cautious and just mindful of what we're doing when we're not hearing and chanting, especially in today's world.
I also wanted to share that you inspired me to share this 524 with a bunch of people today.
Great verse.
It's amazing.
One of the
Thank you.
best. Yeah.
Okay, let's see if the temple room has a contribution to the yagya. In addition to Hare Krishna, Champakalata, Saki, Devidasi. I was thinking when Krishna Kumari and Dayal Gauranga were speaking, just to add, how to make Srimad Bhagavatam class real, how to hear attentively. If we take up some service in Srila Prabhupada's movement, then naturally, and we put our kind of life on the line for Srila Prabhupada, then naturally we'll be hearing the Bhagavatam class very attentively. It'll get real when we take up service. When there's something that is at stake for us, then naturally we'll be hearing very attentively. If we're not invested in Srila Prabhupada's movement, if we have nothing to risk, nothing to kind of worry about, no responsibility in Lord Chaitanya's movement, then it's just, a fancy story,
Yeah.
But when we invest and take up some service, then it gets real.
Yeah.
Just to add.
There was a brahmachari in the ashram many years ago that asked Radhanath Swami a question about the 5 angas of devotional service that we mentioned, right? About like our sadhana and the 5 angas of devotional service. And he was saying that sometimes, and this was a brahmachari who was engaged full-time in outreach and doing different things, and Radhanath Swami was emphasizing the importance of outreach and going out and connecting and sharing Krishna consciousness with others. They were saying that sometimes it's difficult when we're engaged in outreach to really balance all of these 5 angas of bhakti, like to bring them all into our life. And he said, outreach to others is the 5 angas of bhakti. Right? That when you're performing that sincerely, all of the 5 angas are included, right? Because you're hearing and chanting and sharing the holy name and the philosophy of the Bhagavatam with others. You need to be able to be studying or learning in order to be able to have something to share. You're associating. See, he was just saying that, like, when you have some service that's engaged in the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Prabhupada's mission, that itself naturally brings you into a desire to listen intently and all of those things. So
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Prabhu.
okay, looks like we're ready for darshan. Thank you all so much. Please forgive me and share any feedback, corrections I can do to improve or be better. Thank you for your tolerance. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Okay, dear devotees, turn on your cameras if you can.
But I didn't change those. I didn't change those. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Shri Radha Mulida Gauri Chandrasena Bhagavan ki. Yeah, I think it's so. Shri Prabhupada ki.
Jai, Shri Radha Muralidhar, Shri Guru Chandra, Shri Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis and Vaishnavets, ki Jai. So nice to see you, dear devotees. Hare Krishna. Okay, Adipurusha Prabhu, are you here in the room? Would you like to speak? You were about to speak, but then Radha Muralidhar appeared. Nice tilak, Adipurusha Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
I realized I never complimented you on your tilak.
Hare Krishna. All glories to Prabhupada. Well, all glories to Prabhupada. We're here to glorify Krishna. And it is a perfect class. It's not easy for me to speak right now because we're in the elevator compartment is going to cut off. But
Thank you for letting us know. It was a very, very helpful contribution to the class. Vanisha, Hare Krishna. How are you? What's the plan? What's the dress? What's the dress code for?
I'm on my way to jury duty.
How nice.
Yeah. So I'm multitasking as usual. Wonderful class though. Really, really uplifting. I agree. It's always so uplifting to hear Dayal Gauranga Prabhu. Very inspiring. One of the takeaways for me was not to be so hard on myself. And my friend Prashant Prabhu, who might be on the call, is always telling me that as well. He says, you take it too hard on yourself. You make unreasonable standards. And I think it's important to remember that. And so it's nice to hear someone like Dayal Gauranga say that too, because he's exalted. And if he takes it easy, and if he says it's okay to take it easy on ourselves, then Okay. Maybe
Yeah.
a little balance. Maybe a little balance is good.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Venetia. Yeah. Srila Prabhupada says it's a gradual process. Gradual
Yes.
process.
Yes.
And
I like that too. I like that too about like, even if you have a bad session, like sometimes when your japa is crappy, you think, oh, what was the point? What am I'm not getting anywhere. And just to remember, it's like, it's like physical therapy. You don't get there in 1 or 2 or 10 or 12 sessions. It takes time. So I appreciated all of that balanced messaging on a Monday morning.
yeah, I like how he said that do not judge it by the immediate experience that you may be getting.
Yes.
Just the criteria is whether you're committed to it on a daily
Correct.
basis. Yeah.
And here we are.
Yeah.
You first in line.
For mercy. Yeah.
The same thing
One.
when you have children and feeding them, like you might think, oh, they didn't get a balanced meal, but children actually like eat what they need. And you don't look at the day, you look at the week, like, oh, they ate all these things, So we're like children trying to get nourishment. Maybe we do a lot of something in one day, but if we really pull back, it's like when you make a piece of art that you're working really intently on, like something with maybe thread or something, if you're just like looking at all the faults, but when you back away, you're like, oh, there is a design there.
Yeah, there's like a psychological condition where you can't get anything done because you're just too hard on yourself and you just end up not getting anything done. Oh, this is too bad. This is not working out. Just keep going. Keep pushing. It's all right. One foot in front of the other, one day at a time. No problem.
Yeah, just one thought there. What if you're too easy on yourself? I think I'm like that.
You're like that. Me too. Me too, Prashant. Cool. I'm so glad you're like that. I thought I was the only one.
Come do ox training.
Yeah. Yeah. I like how Bhima said that he's the ox. Yeah, Bhima Prabhu. Was the class poetic enough? I think it was very poetic. Dayal Gauranga gave a wonderful class.
I only speak ox. I have to have the whole class translated. And then a ring put in my nose. That's the most important part. The ring in the nose.
Bhima Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
I think what Prashant said, sorry, I know my headphones are bad here, but about being too easy on yourself, that I think that also speaks to the importance of association, which Dayal Gauranga was emphasizing, because, in Prashant and I's relationship, he tells me to take it easy on myself and I kick his butt a little when he asks me to. So that's how association is really critical in balancing in Krishna consciousness. So
yeah. If the devotees truly love you, they won't hesitate to let you know when when you need some adjustment. That's a
do you have a chief butt kicker?
Yeah, my wife. She's the major maintainer of the standard. Yeah, and so many other devotees who are merciful enough to let me know.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, thank you, Manish. Okay, Adipusha Prabhu, you ready?
Hare Krishna, you can hear me okay?
Yeah.
Well, you asked the perfect question about, we hear about stuff in class, then we go outside, and there might be a drop in our quality of consciousness. And then you also answered the question correctly. You said, we're meant to be absorbed, like Rameshwar Prabhu. We have to be absorbed.
By the way, I'm sorry for interrupting you, Adipusha Prabhu, but Rameshwar Prabhu is back. He will be back giving class here regularly.
Great.
He contacted me. He says, "I'm coming back. I want to give class." So it's going to be really, really cool. Okay, go on, please.
Yeah, well, you mentioned that, you hear in class and then you step out of class. And your perfect explanation was that we are devotees, that we are devoted, that it's not just some hobby or some part-time thing. And Prabhupada would call it the no gap philosophy. where you go from this service to that service to that service. And if you're doing something like eating or sleeping so that you can do service, then those things become service also. But the focus of our life, where are we going with this? What is our intention? Where do we put our energy? And the criteria is whether Krishna is pleased. So actually anyone and everyone can please Krishna by doing their humble best, right? You don't have to compare yourself to anybody else, but from our own capacity, we say, Krishna, I love that thing Madan Gopal said a little while ago. If even once in your life, we say, Krishna, I'm yours. I really want to please you. Then Krishna will draw a line between where we are and to the highest stage. In one sense, we'll already be on the highest stage because we're trying to give ourselves to Krishna. Krishna sees that. So, we have to give ourselves to devotional service and other things that we do in order so that we can do that service are also service. Okay, all glories to Prabhupada.
Thank you. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. I feel like I'm a pure devotee. Let's see how long I'm going to last after the class is over.
You can't change the fact you are a pure devotee. That's who you are. It's right in the DNA. It's right in the hard drive.
Underneath the layers, yeah, definitely.
So do your best and don't be.
I'm a Nitya Bada. There's no pure devotee hard drive in me, man. I'm forever.
Okay, everybody except Bhima. All right.
Look at how
Thank you.
humble. What a humble guy.
Krishna
so humble.
needs a new demon, a new strong demon. So I've got like a couple of million lifetimes as I build my strength to face him in hand-to-hand combat. I'm tired of him being the center of attention. I am sick and tired. It's all about Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. I'm done.
Yeah, that's the perfect setting for 13th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, where Krishna is confronting the new demon in disguise, who's also a pure devotee with him, for sure.
Yeah, that's a great service to Krishna. Yeah. Krishna likes to fight with demons. That's a rasa, chivalrous rasa.
Yeah. My daughter Gaurangi, she loves her brother Ram, but she says he's so useless. I can't even wrestle with him. She's eagerly waiting for him to grow up to fight with him, and that's love. Yeah.
Tell her to use him as a football. He's a good football.
Right. Okay, I will. Okay, so Annabelle, Isaiah, where are you? Please, if you're still on this call. Okay, I see Annabelle's iPad. Isaiah, Hare Krishna Prabhu, how are you?
Hare Krishna!
He said, how are you?
Thank you.
How are you? That's how it is.
Isaiah Prabhu, how are you? What are you up to? Yeah.
Making a dragon.
Making what?
A Lego dragon.
All right. You got any snow left?
Yes.
Yeah. Cool. Wonderful. Okay. Have fun, everybody. We love you. Happy Monday. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Hare Krishna. Bye-bye.